For those of a certain age, you may remember the column in the Honolulu Advertiser called Today's Thought. The author was Reverend Paul Osumi. For more than 35 years, readers resonated with his short writings of encouragement. After Reverend Osumi's passing, his son discovered things about his father he never knew, and he wants to share his father's story and timeless messages.
We can do anything for one day. Let us forget yesterday with its mistakes and failures. Let us not waste our time thinking of tomorrow's burdens. For one day, let us be happy. For one day, let us not hurry, worry, fume, or fuss. Let us be kind, be cheerful, find no fault, and live our best today. I'm Norman Osumi. I'm the son of Reverend Paul Osumi. My father is well known for his Today's Thought that he wrote for the Honolulu Advertiser. Growing up as a child and all, even through after I got married, I didn't really read his articles. I knew he was writing in the papers. I knew there were people reading it, but I really didn't feel that I needed to read his articles. I didn't get to really understand his articles until after I retired. And when I started to go back and read his articles, that's when I started to feel he did have a great impact to the people in Hawaii. I wanted to know about my father's life because I was told fathers of that generation didn't talk to their children about their life. And that's true with my father. He hardly talked too much about what his whole life was about. So after he passed away, my mother passed away, and I started to look into his files. When I did do all this research, I really felt he had a very difficult time in his life, but he was overcome it. He was born in Hiroshima, and he came to Hawaii when he was the age of 14 by himself. He had a father here who was a cook at Shafter. The surprising thing is that his father went back to Japan and left him here. And from my understanding, he never saw his parents again after the father left him here when he was 14 years old. He had an older brother that had a Japanese Saimin restaurant by Ala Parkside, and he stayed there for a short while. After that, he got into Mills Institute for Boys, and it was a Christian boarding school, and he stayed there, and that's where he got his high school education. Mills Institute for Boys combined with the Kauai Howell Seminary for Girls, and now today it is called Mid-Pacific Institute. He did very well in high school. He was an outstanding student. He went on to the University of Hawaii here. He graduated here. He got married to my mother, and he started to serve Waipahu YMCA with the youth program. At this point in time, I'm not sure what the reason he did it, but they both went to the mainland, to Los Angeles, and he attended the University of Southern Cal, and he got his master's degree in theology. Once he got his degree, he came back to Hawaii. He served first at the Hilo Japanese Christian Church. Then he went to Lihui Christian Church in Lihui, Kauai, and that's when I was born back then. And so I'm a Kauai product. At this point in time, this is where the turn of his life. December 7th, when the war broke out, he was one of the men that were picked up by the government, and he was interned on the mainland during the war period. He was a great community leader. People in Kauai just loved him. They wrote even letters to the government stating that he should be released because they would vouch for him. The government never responded. But because he was born in Japan, he was well-educated, bilingual, and a leader in the community, he also wrote to the Japanese consulate, and I always wondered why he was writing to the Japanese consulate. Well, back then, the Japanese people that made up about 30% of the people in Hawaii, when anything happened to them, the Issei's, death or marriage or whatever happened to their family, they wrote to the Japanese consulate because the Japan government was keeping track, historical records of all the people here. So he was writing letters. And from my understanding, once he wrote letters to the Japanese consulate, that put a red flag to the United States government. So he was one of them picked up for those reasons. He didn't do anything wrong. And all through his internment, he wrote to the government a couple of times and asking them, you might have made a mistake. What did I do wrong? Because he couldn't figure out why he was interned and sent to the mainland. Of course, the government never responded to his letters. So he had to spend the first time in a prisoner of war camp, which was Lordsburg internment camp in New Mexico. From there, he was able to go to Gila relocation camp through a minister, Christian minister, that wrote to the government and asked the government if they could parole my father from the prisoner of war camp, the internment camp, to go to Gila relocation camp, where all the various Japanese families on the West Coast were taken, besides Manzanar, Tule Lake, and all the others. So my father was able to go there, and he was able to now start practicing the church, to help the church and the Christian people that were in the relocation camp. During his stay there, he came down with valley fever, which hits your lungs. It's like a pleurisy. He got very, very sick. My mother, my brother, and I were living here with her parents. This family that was taking care of him wrote to my mother and said, you better come to Gila relocation camp because your father is very ill and he may pass away here. So my mother packed my brother and I, and we went and we joined him. So I was in the relocation camp for about a year. And he made a comment in one of the newspaper articles. He said he believes that going through that, being sick and helping the people that were desperate in the relocation, made him a better minister. After that, he understood things about life. He came back to Hawaii after the war, and he served at Wailua Pilgrim Church. Then he was moved to Eva Community Church, where he served for about 9 years. And from there, he became the minister for Nuano Congregational Church, where he served close to about 18 to 20 years at Nuano Church. Back in the late 1950s, 8 different faith ministers were allowed to write articles for the Honolulu Advertiser. The other 7 that were writing, they were writing about their theology. He was not writing about his Christian theology. He was writing about how people should live their life every day. And because of that, so many people attached to his articles, and it lasted for about 35 years. My father passed away in 1996. He was 90 years old, and he had strokes, and the strokes immobilized him, and he passed away. My mother passed away a few years later in 2003. I didn't realize it until I retired back in 2003, and I started to get involved in all the files that were left behind that he had in his folders, and I started to read some of those today's thoughts. I started to, at that point in time, realize that what he was writing in the newspaper for 35 years did have a lot of impact to us, so many people, because he was writing to everybody. Because my father's article touched so many people, the editor from Fairbanks, Alaska, asked my father. So my father was sending his articles to Fairbanks, and they were reading it. HAWAIʻI, which was a Japanese paper in Hawaii during that period of time, was also printing his articles in Japanese for the Japanese community. I was surprised that his article even reached people on the mainland. Going through his files, I read many letters from people from the mainland writing to him. I have a whole box full of folders for people from, not only from the mainland, all over, from Hawaii, even some of the foreign countries too, that came to Hawaii and was reading his articles. There were people even from the prison here in Hawaii. They were reading the newspaper, and they needed his advice too. Although he was not a psychologist or psychiatrist, he was just a minister. But because of his articles, they wanted to talk to him and ask him questions about, their life and how they should live their life. Over the 35 years that he wrote, I had to find out, where did he get all of his articles? He was getting it from everywhere. Sometimes late at night, he would get up and got a thought, he would write it down. During the day, he had a thought, he would write it down. He took it from life, real life situations where he met people and what they told him about their ailments or things. He turned it into thoughts because these people were so encouraging for what they told him about their ailment. So he took it from all over, books, movies, people he met, things that he just came up with. He just got, so for 35 years, I was surprised because that amounted to thousands of thoughts. He talked about health, he talked about marriage, he talked about work, he talked about death, you talk about anything about life, and you can find an article that he referred to in life, in general principles and how to live a meaningful life. My mother did one thing in helping my father, and she kept a perfect record of all of the thoughts that he wrote. From the day one that he started to write these thoughts, she would clip his articles, the today's thoughts, out of the newspaper, and she would paste it on an 8.5 by 11 paper. She would date it, put the day it was done, the year it was done. So to today, I have all of my father's thoughts for 35 years. It's surprising because the problems that we were faced back in the late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's the same type of problems that are occurring today. That's why I look at his articles and I really feel his articles are timeless. Growing up with my father, there were 3 things that I think I learned from him. And the first thing was your health. He mentioned your health is the most precious thing you have in life. All the money, all the fame, whatever you have, does not have any meaning if you lose your health. The second thing is that he kind of mentioned, and this is more from, I guess, growing up under him, he always kind of mentioned to me, think positively, never think negatively, always think positively. When you do things, think on the positives and never say, I can't do it, or I won't be able to do it, or things in that nature. Say, yeah, I will do it. I can do it. He always felt you have to carry a positive attitude in life. And the third thing, which he didn't really talk to me about, but it was reflected in his ministry, is to be a giving person, to help people. So those are the 3 things that I feel my father passed on to me, from a father to son. You know, at my age right now, as I'm getting older, I feel people need help. I mean, people look toward, some kind of guidance. And what my father was doing all of his life, helping people, writing his today's thoughts articles, it was helping tremendously because I constantly get people that come up to me and talk to me and tell me that, what he wrote in the paper was so meaningful, so helpful toward them. And to me, I would like to see that carry on because, like I say, it's timeless, and I wish I could carry this whole thing on to the next generation and the future generations, because what he wrote is so valuable. That's why I like to see it carried on somehow. But I won't be able to carry it on after I pass away.